Welcome to Malpractice Podcast.
Are you ready to get started?
Yes, I am.
How's it going?
You know how it's going.
I do.
Y'all, I just want to call something out before you hear it.
Do it. Wait, let's introduce ourselves first.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
You go.
I'm Jess.
I'm Sydney.
And I have a list.
And this
now.
is Malpractice Podcast.
It is Malpractice Podcast. So I was convinced by my dentist that I needed braces as a child, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, my parents thought that was a waste of money on me, though their youngest child did get braces.
Ooh.
So we'll just leave that there.
We'll save that for family counseling. Go on.
Okay. But what I did get today is Invisalign.
Mhm.
This is not an ad.
No.
I have Invisalign in my mouth right now.
Yeah.
And I have like rubber bands in my mouth. There's a lot of things happening.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lisp now, and I think I will. This is where I live now, lisp town. So if I sound weird, that's why.
Also, this would be the worst ad for Invisalign ever. Like, do you want to lisp?
Yeah, during this process, it's like really long.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I hate it. I am saying there is a countdown.
Yeah.
Because I don't enjoy it.
I mean, I had braces like in middle school.
I thought you had in middle school, yeah.
Middle school and high school, I had braces for like 4 years, and it was the worst.
I just like don't think it's respectful.
It's not respectful to your face or your mouth or your talking. It's bad stuff.
Everyone I talked to today at work, I was like, just so you know, I started Invisalign, and I sound weird, and they're like, oh, I couldn't tell. And that's when I called Sydney today, and I was like, listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I have a slight lisp.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you.
And she's like, yeah, you do. And I was like, everyone lied to me. They're like, you sound fine. I can't tell. I can hear myself.
Here's the thing. I remember when I was I think we were at my bachelorette party, and I put on a dress, and I was like, does this look bad? And you said, it doesn't look bad, but you shouldn't wear that one. We don't lie to each other. That's our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
What else were we supposed to talk about?
The case.
Yeah. Okay. We could just jump into this part. So, you may have seen, if you've been listening to our show, that Dr. William Husel,
Do the hustle.
also known as Do the Hustle, was found not guilty on all 14 counts of murder that he was facing. Now, in our last episode, we thought he was guilty.
What I will say is this. Did that man prescribe that amount of drugs?
Yes.
Yes.
Did someone inject that amount of drugs?
Whether or not he was convicted of murder, that wasn't for us to say. The jury said that's their business. But he did prescribe the quantity and dosages that are lethal.
We've had some like pushback on Twitter, which I don't care. Like, you're welcome to engage with us. I love it. I'd love to talk to you. If you think we're wrong, great. You can tell me that. But I will say, like you said, the jury decided that's their decision. Great. He got due process, right? But I agree with you that the things that he did,
they weren't good.
Were black and white. They were documented. Like, there's no...
Yeah.
It's just whether that constituted murder or not, and the jury decided that it didn't.
Right. Where I get really frustrated is these family members now feel like they do not have justice.
Yeah.
But they are able to still seek, like, civil...
Yeah, there will still be civil cases that I think come out of this.
Yeah.
And this happens all the time, where you cannot be found guilty in criminal court because of the burden of proof of beyond a reasonable doubt, but you can still be found guilty of wrongful death in civil court.
Civil court.
I bet that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I also feel, like you said, really, really sorry for the families, because I feel like I see people celebrating, oh, he's not guilty, that's so great. But you have to remember that there are like 35 families out there who still think that he murdered their loved one. So
yeah,
I feel really sorry for the families.
But what we do here
right
is we give our opinions about what we read and what we research.
Correct.
And that's what we did. And the jury said he's not guilty, and that's great for him. He also had a really kick-ass lawyer.
He did.
So it's also great for his lawyer.
In case any of you are not aware, Jose Baez was also Casey Anthony's defense attorney. I think the defense team did a really good job of misdirecting.
They did a great job.
They made the case about compassionate end-of-life care. I think at one point Jose Baez even said, my client is at trial right now because he's a compassionate doctor. They made it about like end-of-life quality care. I think the defense did a fantastic job. I think the prosecutor could have done some things differently.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this as a member of Dr. Husel's legal team and you're looking to sue us,
please don't.
Please don't.
Please don't do that. But what I do appreciate about our justice system, for whatever it is that you really do get to put the decision in the hands of a group of people.
Yep.
And they come back and they say, this is how we feel. And you then get to move on with your life.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, if they say you're not guilty, which in this case, that's what they said. And I wasn't in the room.
Yeah.
I wish I would have been, because that's my secret. And
it's a public secret.
Not a secret, but that is my goal in life, is to be on a jury
so bad.
And be in that room where it happens.
Yeah, I don't want to be on a jury. I respect the shit out of our legal process. I do not want to be the one to make the decision.
Yeah. And I feel like where I was really shocked was the Redonda Vaught case and how she was found guilty.
Mm-hmm.
We just covered that. And based on what
2 weeks ago, yeah,
we had talked about and what we had learned from Bruce, I was like, oh, this man, 17,000 stop signs. Like, what do you mean?
Right. That's our like CYA for last week. Those are just our opinions.
It'll be a great Netflix documentary.
Oh yeah,
that we write and
that we write and produce. Netflix, hit us up. We're ready. We don't know anything about filming, but we are gonna call it. What did we say last
week?
Dead Shark Eyes. The William Do the Hustle story.
and thank you, jury people, for your service, because honestly, you are my heroes, my personal heroes. I would love to be
Jess
in
will
your
gladly
shoes.
take your spot.
Please call me.
Okay, do you want to start today's episode?
Yeah, girl.
Okay, so today we're going to start a two-parter addressing the history of healers who just so happen to be the women that were targeted as witches. We are starting with the European witch trials this week, and next week we'll get into the Salem witch trials, both of which are way more ridiculous than what you learned about in history class.
It's like a chapter in a book. Or no, it's a paragraph in a chapter in a book. And I'm like, wait, that's the cool stuff right there.
And also, the fact that the European witch trials went on, I mean, not continuously, but they went on for like 3 centuries.
Forever.
Never read very much about this, so we're excited to cover it.
So some of you listening may be thinking like, what are y'all doing? Why are you talking about this? Like, this has nothing to do with medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is simple, that some of the targets of these, like, what is essentially a genocide, were actually like midwives and healers, and predominantly women, that were helping people to stay alive and recover from illness or give birth in a time where literally being alive was like a full-time job.
Right.
Like, I would not survive in these time periods.
And healing people was basically impossible.
Yeah, exactly. And they were targeted by people because of their skills and their knowledge around like herbs and the human body.
Yeah.
Because they could heal people, essentially, they were executed. And that healing is medicine, and medicine is what we talk about here. So, gotcha. We're going to talk about it.
So we're coming full circle.
Full circle.
So we're starting with the European witch trials. And if you were like me and you have no idea about these, from the 14th to 17th centuries.
Long time.
Very long time. People were accused of witchcraft all over and executed in really gruesome ways. Likely, much of this was fueled by religious zealots who were targeting what they perceived as magic or like devil worship or devil work. In the end, tens of thousands of people would be put to death as quote-unquote witches. 3/4 of them were women, while some historians stated that like wise women, healers, and midwives might have accounted for up to 25% of the people accused. It is so hard to come up with an exact number because number one, midwife wasn't always their job title. Like sometimes they were just a healer.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were just a person who was doing other things who happened to know about herbs and plants, right?
And then the wise women term too was like someone you would go to who was literally like old and wise.
Yeah.
And just knew everything from like lasting 60 years of life.
Right.
So people would go to them and she'd be like, yeah, eat this leaf.
Yeah.
With this other leaf, mash them together, and you will be okay while they pull your tooth out of your face.
Exactly.
Like, that's the kind of vibe.
She's like, I've been alive for longer than anyone in this whole village, so I know which plants to not eat.
Yes, I have survived.
So it's really hard because some historians say that the number of people who were accused as witches that also were midwives was potentially exaggerated, but either way, here we go. Let's do some background.
So before the 1400s, there was like a general belief in magic in Europe. Do you believe in magic? Like everyone should believe in a little bit of magic.
Oh my God.
I don't know why I did that. I like actually hate myself, but like leave it in. It's fine.
It was a lot. I'm leaving it all in though.
Whatever. It's totally fine. There was like a acknowledged belief in magic, and partially that's probably from people being like, how did this happen? Like, must have been magic. Because like we said, people didn't live very long. They were living very short lives, and they just wanted a little joy.
Yeah.
The heart of the witch hunting activities was in German-speaking areas, and that was like what we know now as Germany, Switzerland, and northeastern France. And they kicked off in what is now France and Switzerland, and then like quickly moved into those other areas.
Yeah.
In 1428, a not too well documented investigation and trial happened. In that trial, over 360 people were put to death, men and women.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of documentation, aka like we know people weren't writing shit down at this time. We've talked about that before. This was not a priority.
Right.
But that was like an example of the type of event that these witch hunts and then the trials would reveal. It's like this spider web of people accusing people, and eventually like hundreds of people getting put to death.
Yeah. And it's so weird because when you see these old documents that do have something about it, it'll be like a clip from a newspaper where someone's like 367 people were put to death and you're like, please tell me more.
Yeah.
There's no more.
That's the number we want to dig into.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, it wasn't like all of Europe was like, okay, getting witches, bitches. That's not what's happening. Different areas were doing it different times.
Yeah.
And so while it lasted for a long time and there were like brief pauses, or it was like a focus in England and then it was a focus in Germany.
Yeah.
So it was like bouncing around Europe at different times. Different countries had different focal points. Different rulers would pick it up. Political leaders, church leaders, what have you. At this point in time, magic could be basically anything.
Yeah.
It could be like speaking weird words. Mm-hmm. There's a story I read about a woman who, like, bam, could have animal hands and feet.
You put that in our script, and I was like, sorry, what?
I don't know what you're talking. I think they were just like, the way the story read was like, I don't know if she kept animal hands and feet like rabbit's feet.
Uh-huh.
And then they were like, oh, you have animal hands and feet? Like, you could switch them out, switchies?
When I read this, I was like, so is it like her foot is bam, it's a skunk? Or is it like her foot is the foot of a skunk?
No, her foot is the foot of the skunk.
Okay.
Like, she just had, like, bare feet all of a sudden.
Well, that does sound like witchcraft. I ain't gonna lie to you.
That was witchy shit, according to them.
I would need to see pictures, but...
obviously didn't, whatever.
Yeah.
People healing other people with herbs.
Mm-hmm.
Witchcraft. Having a pet you really liked. They were like, why do you like that pet?
Especially if it was a cat.
Yeah, exactly. Pissing somebody off. And they would then accuse you of having some birthmark that no one else could find because it was an invisible witch mark, which they could then never prove. Basically, like, whatever weird shit that you were doing, if people were like, you're an outcast, you're kind of fringe.
Yeah.
You're probably a witch.
Or you're a single woman.
Oh, yeah.
Or your cow is grazing on my cow's territory. Like, it was just the stupidest shit that could get you accused.
The man that I like was interested in you. Witchcraft.
So, before the European witch hunts, magic was basically seen as something that wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
People throughout Europe had practiced, like, dabbled in folk magic for a while, which is not that unexpected because of how bad their lives sucked at that point. Like, if you want to do magic, do some magic, whatever.
Also, you have to explain things away somehow.
Right.
How is the sun in the sky? I don't know. Witchcraft.
We don't know how wind works. Witches.
Witchcraft,
right?
yeah.
But in the late 1400s, the idea of like witches on brooms, chasing children, stealing babies, cursing people was invented. And it tracks right along the Christian invention of the devil. So, in early Christianity, before the 1400s, the devil wasn't a huge deal. He was just like sneaky, and he was like a fallen saint. He was sneaky. He participated in just like general fuckery, right?
Right.
He would like steal shit and make things go badly. But around the 14th century, he got like a big promotion. The heads of the Catholic Church got with artists and they were like, we need you to make him look cooler and stronger and bigger and like an enemy that people want to turn against. Because at this point, the Catholic Church was like, we need to find a common enemy that we can point at and tell people like how to avoid it. And so they could blame things like crops failing, a ship goes missing,
people get sick,
whatever bad thing happens in their life. They're like, bam, it was the devil. The devil, the devil, the devil. They're just pointing fingers left and right at the devil.
Right.
As organized Christianity was on the rise, books started to be published on demonology, like handbooks and guides to get rid of witches, and explaining what witches were and what they do. So between the years of 1500 and 1600, which overlaps with the like medieval period, up to 80,000 suspected witches were put to death across Europe. Those numbers are debated depending on who you ask. Apparently, Germany had the highest witchcraft execution rate, and Ireland had the lowest, so score one for my personal home team.
Typical bullshit. Thank you. But Germany makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Because we're going to get into why in a minute.
Everyone lost in the witch trials, so the European witch trials were known as the Great Witch Hunt, and they lasted until around 1782. And again, they started in like the 1400s.
That's a long time.
So for basically almost 400 years, people were just getting hunted down for like essentially anything you can think of.
It's a long time to keep something rolling.
It is.
So even though much of the hunting was led by religious belief and or leaders, there's also those just like earthly things that happen, like Sydney mentioned with crops. That could be like something that would lead people into like a witch hunt.
Mm-hmm.
There was also the rise of Protestant beliefs, which were outside Catholic beliefs, which was challenging the leading power at the time. And then all of these religious groups were connecting to like political leaders.
Yeah.
Also, to compound upon everything else, a general unrest between rich people and poor people.
Mm-hmm.
So the Catholic Church before the 1500s didn't really take a super strong stance on activity going after witches. Like, they didn't say, let's rally the troops right now.
Yeah.
They did talk about it, obviously. Religious leaders in the Protestant faith did. In fact, Martin Luther, he, like, founded Lutheran, and Calvin, I believe his first name's John, like, ended up founding like the Baptist belief.
Yeah.
So this is just a side note, but it's really important. When he broke away from the Catholic Church, he translated the Bible into the people's language. So the first like written Bible that people, the general public could read, was written and translated into German by Martin Luther when he was in hiding.
Yeah.
And he was if my parents ever find out how to work any podcast, they were going to be so offended. He was kind of a nutcase.
Yeah.
He was really very religious, obviously, had like really strict views. And it makes so much sense to me that those two people were like, there's some witchy shit out here.
Correct.
But they were very much like organizing the people. There's evil in our midst. Like they believe there's evil in the Catholic Church. Like they needed to find it and get it out. And so that makes sense to me. Thanks a lot, guys, because you are so embarrassing.
Yeah.
That's their MO.
Yeah. And it's kind of a thread that runs throughout is like when there are hard times, people look for a scapegoat.
Yeah, they have to blame something.
And witches basically became the scapegoat for everyone to like vent their frustration and anger with living in the medieval period.
Right, which sucked.
Yeah.
So that belief system was also like intersected with, and there was apparently this large group of widowed women who were just like, their husbands died because it's medieval times. They were probably in war or they fell off the roof or something. Like people were dying.
They didn't know you had to wash your hands, so.
Literally, they're disgusting. They're throwing poop in the streets. Like, can we stop?
It's not good.
It's not good. So women would turn to a profession so they could make money. And it was like usually the profession of healing.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, having a job, but then that job went against societal standards. So it's also possible, and historians speculate, that women in this group were targeted by the church and by like leaders, not only because they were doing some skilly, witchy shit, but because they were living outside of societal norms.
Yeah.
And they were like, stop doing that.
Yeah, I totally believe that because essentially, if someone was living on the fringes of society or just doing something that was like a little bit different,
don't do that.
They were immediately a witch.
Straight to
witch jail. Yeah.
Witch jail's pretty short-lived.
Witch jail is a fuckaroo.
Most of the time you just dead.
When you think about the amount of people accused, you may be like me and wonder, so how many people overall were murdered?
Yeah.
The estimation is between 40,000 and 100,000 people.
Bingo, that's crazy. That's a lot of people.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would call it a genocide. I think that's totally fair. So,
absolutely.
The Catholic Church, you mentioned the Catholic Church, they are definitely not blameless here. In 1484, Pope Innocent the Eighth, why do I not write out Roman numerals? Like I can just read them on the fly.
I was like, wow, super impressed. Also, Pope Innocent, don't they name themselves?
Yes, they do.
That is crazy to say that.
Pope never done nothing wrong.
Pope Innocent, that's making a very big assumption here, sir.
Yeah, also now I'm very suspect of you because why are you naming yourself Innocent?
You could have said Pope, whatever, a regular name, Joseph. But you said Innocent because you're not.
Because you're not.
You're not.
Further to that point, he issued a bill denouncing witches, and a few years later, the German Inquisitor Heinrich Kramer, which... Why is Inquisitor the most sinister sounding job of all time? Why is anyone, if you need an Inquisitor, whatever you're doing is wrong, period.
It does sound scary.
You do? I hate it.
But it sounds like, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like a fancy way to say the girl that you know that can find whoever you need to find on social media when you only have their first name.
Yeah. It's like the person who is at the table asking hard questions is the Inquisitor.
Yeah.
And his hard questions are, bitch, are you a witch?
And if you're not a witch, can you prove it? And you can't because it's the fucking medieval times, so you're dead.
And I invented the definition of witches.
That's what he's saying.
So Kramer wrote a handbook on witches, and he called it the Malleus Maleficarum. It was a lot.
Sounds
it's a
right.
mouthful. Which means the Hammer of the Witches, which is a fantastic band name, and I call dibs.
You're right to call dibs. And the Catholic Inquisition wrote about that book, and they said, all wickedness is but little to the wickedness of a woman. What else is woman but a foe to friendship? An unescapable punishment, a necessary evil, which...
A necessary evil? God damn.
A desirable calamity, domestic danger, an evil nature painted with fair colors. Women are by nature instruments of Satan. They are by nature carnal, a structural defect rooted in the original creation. And honestly, I say to that, fuck you.
Fuck. It feels like you might have some issues with women that you want to work out, maybe before publishing some literature about it. I don't know. See a psychiatrist.
My guy, what do you mean? Like,
here's the thing. Sounds like somebody has mommy issues.
It feels like oh, big time mommy issues.
Yeah, fuck them for that. So this book became the second best-selling book in Europe after the Bible.
God.
And that partially happened because it was written almost exactly as the printing press was being invented.
Mm-hmm.
So people were like, hell yes, what book can I buy? Okay, there's the Bible. We already have one of those. Or there's this witch book. Yeah, fuck it. Let's give this one a try.
Yeah, let's get the witch book.
Because there's 2 books available.
You're right.
And we already have the Bible. In this book, the author accuses anyone of participating in witchcraft of heresy and suggests that they be burned at the stake and or tortured in a variety of horrible ways.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a sensitive stomach, I highly suggest you don't look into any of this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of boob smashing.
Okay.
They smash a lot of boobs.
Why do they do that?
I don't know. They had a machine.
I mean, it hurts like a bitch. Guaranteed.
Have you seen a mammogram machine?
Oh, yeah.
So it looks like that, except it just keeps going. They just
literally smash your boob.
Forever. Okay.
I hate them.
This book was literally the step-by-step handbook on hunting, legally prosecuting, and executing suspected witches. In this book, he also says that women are more susceptible to the temptation of witchcraft because of, and I quote, their weaker nature. And he often said these women would have, quote, loose tongues or be more lustful than men, which would drive them to seek out power by becoming witches. And honestly, I don't think I would have lasted very long in this society. Am I right?
You wouldn't, and neither would I. I would hope I wouldn't. A boob smashing, you lost me.
You smashed my boobs about.
I'm out.
This book also accused witches of infanticide, cannibalism, using their spells to steal a man's penis.
Well, if there's one thing I've wanted to steal, it's not a penis. I'm telling you that, witch hunters. You picked the wrong bitch.
You picked the wrong one. If there's anything you need to know about this book, here it is. There was one section on witches using their powers to like poison crops and fuck up agriculture. There were 5 sections on how they could steal or destroy a penis. So clearly, someone was very focused on their own junk.
Right. They were like, they're coming after the patriarchy.
And our penises specifically.
Hide them now.
What would someone do if they stole a penis? Please enlighten me.
I can't think of anything I'd want less than that.
I can't think of a single thing. Like, can you imagine being a witch? You can cast spells. You can make animals talk to you. And you go around with just a bag of dicks? That's the worst use of your time.
It would only be cool.
You're magic.
It would only be cool if you could take a dick and put it on a different part of their body.
Yeah.
Now that's a power.
Now that's a thought.
So this guy, Kramer, Graham Crackers, that's what I'm going to call him.
Fine.
Who sounds like he was a blast at parties and in life. Is then given...
When you said that, I almost spit my tea into the microphone.
Is then given the authority by the Catholic Church, who is, of course, running everything,
mm-hmm.
In 1487 to investigate and prosecute witches.
Yeah.
This is like a bull in a china shop.
Yeah.
All straight downhill from there, because this book lays out the idea that once you're accused of being a witch, like, essentially you're a witch, and they will torture you until you confess, and then they will kill you. And you will accuse other people in the process. Right.
And the ways that they tortured women, men, children, everybody were horrendous. By 1520, this book had gone through several different iterations. I think it was 12 different versions.
Honestly, that's pretty quick for the time.
Very quick.
So good job to the author, at least on the speed.
Right.
Laying out, like, the printing press, that takes time, too.
Here's the thing. If you're crazy and you're obsessed with the idea that someone's going to steal your wiener, I think you put a lot of effort into things.
You get pretty desperate.
You do.
And you want to get it down pat.
He's like, nobody's stealing this junk. And everybody's like, no one wants to steal your wiener.
Nobody's doing it.
Nobody was even thinking about your wiener until you started talking about it.
Graham Cracker.
Graham Cracker. So... where are we? 1520, the UK responds to the witch fever by passing the first Witchcraft Act of 1542, passed by Henry VIII, so you know it was fucked up.
Oh, already
primo.
Choice.
And then after that, the Elizabethan Witchcraft Act of 1563. The first person executed under this act was Agnes Waterhouse, also known as Mother Waterhouse because she took care of people. Agnes was accused by several of her friends and neighbors for causing illnesses and deaths around the neighborhood. So while being interrogated, quote unquote,
LOL.
Agnes admitted that she had a cat familiar named Sathan. It's like Satan with a lisp.
It is like Satan, but the way that I say it now.
Correct. Super clever name. So neighbors said that the cat spoke to her in a strange hollow voice and it craved human blood.
Why would the neighbors know that unless the neighbors were then all witches?
What I can't get behind is the fact that they're commenting more on the fact that the cat's voice sounds weird and not the fact that a goddamn cat is talking.
If I was the investigator general, I would be like, wait, you heard the cat talking too? Satan's going down and you all going down with him.
So Agnes basically confesses to doing some spooky shit, but she's like, I never killed anyone. She's like, I did let my cat, Sathan, who is a spotted white cat, I let him do some things just to like see what he could do. Like, these people are being tortured, so they're clearly just pulling things out of thin air, right?
They're like, what do I say? And they're like, say your cat was tap dancing every night at midnight. And they're like, all right, I taught that bitch how to tap dance. Like, please stop stretching me. Like,
right, tippity tap.
Oh, no.
4 tiny tap shoes. Like, they're just pulling things out of their ass because they're like, please stop torturing me. So Agnes eventually confesses to spooky shit. She's like, but I never killed anyone. Either way, 63-year-old Agnes Waterhouse was hanged, and her quote-unquote confessions eventually led to the arrest, accusation, and deaths of 2 other women.
So, yeah. So this is like a typical story, and I think what's common is like the question of how people would get accused. Because in theory, you'd have to be doing some witchy shit, right?
Right.
And people would be like, your cat is tap dancing.
I would have questions.
Or you have a bag of dicks.
I saw Agnes with a bag of dicks. Why would anyone have that?
Got me a little worried. But so people could be accused for like making ointments from plants, knowing a lot about plants or herbs or mushrooms. People would be like, oh, that's witchy shit. If you had attraction to the opposite sex, which makes me so confused about what they want. They're confused.
You can't like the same sex. You can't like the opposite sex, period.
You just can't like anything.
Don't say anything.
Stop it and don't look at your cat. If you like ignore your chores or duties, like obviously you're a witch.
Sure.
If you curse somebody by sticking like an effigy with pins, which they got you there. If you are sticky pins in a doll.
If you have a voodoo doll, it's a little witchy.
That's witchy. It's not right or wrong. That's what it is.
It's a little witchy, yeah.
If you're jealous of someone else.
Sure.
A witch. If you slap someone in the face.
Witch.
If you give someone bad gestures. Witch.
You just made a bad gesture and I liked it.
Made one.
Yeah.
If you speak ill of someone when they're not there, you could be accused of being a witch.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an interaction with someone and then they leave and then they get sick, that's you. You made them sick.
You okay?
A witch.
Yeah.
If you have a birthmark on you, you are a big witch, in which I have a huge birthmark on my chest. I would be murdered.
You do. Immediate witch.
They called it was like Lebeau, Lebeau. I don't know, but that was like the witch mark or the devil's mark.
Yeah.
And then, like I said before, like you could also have an invisible one.
We'll find it.
Can't find it. If you use herbs or natural remedies to heal someone and you don't use like the church or an exorcism, witch.
Also, so you talked about the witch's mark. When they would accuse someone, there was a guy whose entire job was to shave the person.
Yeah.
And then another guy's job was to check the person's body for witch marks.
Yeah.
And if they didn't find it, they'd be like, well, she has an invisible witch mark.
Right.
And it's like, or she doesn't have one. Did we ever think
if the possibility is to have an invisible witch mark, why are you shaving and going through the trouble? I know the job market is bad, but goddamn.
Here's what I think. I think the shaving guy probably liked it, right?
Oh, 100%.
He's probably like, ooh, I'm going to shave you.
Yeah, he is his fetish. He was a witch.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
So when thinking about the impact that midwives and healers could have, you would think that everybody in this time would be happy that they're there. It would be like, yay, the more the merrier. But no, ma'am, that's not how it went.
No.
So at the time, many churches believed in what they called the curse of Eve. If you're not familiar with the Bible, basically the belief that was that Eve, from the famous duo Adam and Eve.
I don't know why I was like Tom and Jerry. I don't know.
Tom and Jerry, Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner.
All the same.
Adam and Eve. So they thought that she was the first one to bite into the fruit that God told them not to eat. And by doing so, she allegedly cursed women forever to have like periods, painful time giving birth. So that's a blast for women everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
If a midwife was good at easing the pain of childbirth, people were like, women are supposed to suffer.
Witch.
So you obviously have witch abilities and you're going against the church. These professionals would use herbs and organic medicines like belladonna, nightshade, ergo during the labor process, and they found that very sus.
Mm-hmm.
The Malleus Maleficarum book that we talked about earlier said that midwives did more to hurt the Catholic Church than anyone else, which is a crazy statement considering the history of the Catholic Church.
yeah. I wrote that. I thought that was so funny.
You did write
it.
Midwives during this time actually pioneered the development of anesthetics. They helped women avoid miscarriages. And yes, they eased the pain and suffering associated with childbirth. So sue them. And that's exactly what people did. Yeah. Anytime a midwife helped a woman deal with an unsuccessful pregnancy that ended in a miscarriage, there was a real risk that she would be accused of cursing the person who had lost their baby. If a baby was born with like physical deformities, the midwife could be accused of swapping the healthy baby out with a changeling.
Yeah.
Midwives were doing this hard enough job at great personal risk to themselves.
The medical field worked closely with the churches, as the church actually controlled medical schooling at the time.
Yeah.
The church wanted women to stop practicing medicine. But it was super difficult at first because people were like, I don't actually trust this man who's young and went off to the church school. And this woman, I've known her all my life. She's, 55. She's the oldest person within a 100-mile radius. Like, I'm definitely going to trust her.
Yeah, same.
Basically, everyone was super suspicious of midwives in the church. And then as their knowledge of herbs and plants and naturalistic remedies grew, so did people's suspicion that they were secretly magical because the church was also putting out propaganda, like the books, about how this was like not actually healing, it was actually hurting people. And it's witchcraft and the devil, etc.
Right.
So they started to impose restrictions. All midwives had to have their work supervised by a member of the church who would essentially double check that no magic was going on.
Really standard, yeah.
Right. You were like risking your life to practice medicine. So when you're accused, obviously, of being a witch, it's like a 99% chance you did.
Yeah.
So they would torture you. You're probably going to be dead. Your family was at risk too, obviously, if they didn't denounce you.
Right.
But they also like took your property and all your stuff.
It's not cool, yeah.
And they can't have anything.
I also saw that witch hunters would target specifically like widows and single women because if they had any property, the witch hunters stood to make lots of money and property by finding and executing so-called witches if they had property that could be taken away from them.
Yeah.
So not even being rich is going to get you out of this one is essentially the moral of that story.
So we wanted to get into some like specific examples of targets, individual targets, some towns and like experiences during this time. There's a town called St. Maximum. In 1572, a woman there was charged with using witchcraft and murdering children.
Yeah.
Because she was like helping in childbirth. It was one of those like there were stillbirths, etc. Under torture, she said, "Oh my God, you're right. Leave me alone, please. My God, no more boob squishing."
Yeah.
And she implicated 2 other women who were all 3 of them ended up being burned at the stake with her, which like, thanks a lot, bestie, for that.
Yeah. Who's the first person whose name pops into my head?
Yes, exactly. And so that little tiny town, it only had 2,000 people in it. So that like spiraled into this like massive witch hunt in that area. And after 5 years, over 500 people of those 2,000 were killed because of witch hunting.
Oh my God. That's crazy. Who was left to hunt the witches if 500 people were killed?
I have no
That's
idea.
Crazy.
I also saw something about Swedish witch trials. They were crazy.
Yeah.
Young children were the focal point. So they were accused, threatened, abused, beaten, whipped, bathed in frozen lakes, or threatened with being baked in ovens to like point out witches who were all like children. They provided the bulk of the accusations, which ended up leading to obviously the illegitimacy of the entire trials because it's like they're young.
Yeah.
And it was just like a huge abuse of power in Sweden where they were like targeting children.
That's crazy. We'll get into this when we talk about the U.S. Salem witch trials, but I know that there was one 4-year-old kid who was accused and left in a jail for over a year in the U.S.
Everyone's there.
So children were not above being accused.
Literally. And then I found a book or an author. Her name is Olivia Campbell. She's an author and a journalist who's written about historical mass murder and like the witch trials in Europe. And she wrote about a 60-year-old woman that was like thought to actually be a nun who was accused of being a witch, which is like you cannot escape. Like, you can't even be a nun.
You can't win. Jesus.
Her name, oh my God, I'm gonna butcher it. I'm really trying. Is Costanza de Libiano. Yeah, that sounds right.
You tell me.
She was a healer, a midwife, and like thought to be a nun, right? She was accused of being witch.
Yeah.
She was 60. On trial, she's asked what kind of medicine she's using. And she goes on to say, like, I pick up Betoni, I'm washing it like it's salad, and I crush it into a mortar to get its juice, and I give it to my patient for 3, 4, or 5 days, telling them the more they drink, the better it will feel, and they'll feel.
Yeah.
So she's accused of causing the death of several babies because women are using the herbs she's giving during birth, and, like, the babies are dying. It's not like childbirth is like one of the most risky, life-threatening things, but whatever.
Right. Also, the miscarriage rate is probably insanely high because they literally don't know what a vitamin is.
And they don't drink water.
And they eat like once a year.
And they don't wash their hands, as we've said, which is disgusting.
Yeah. And they have like one pair of underwear.
Or none. So they said, are you killing babies? She said, nope, I never did that. I'm just providing ointments to women during labor, and the babies died. Like, babies do that sometimes when they're born. Like, I only have like 2 years left. I'm 60. So those leaves actually that she was using were like, they're long oval and they have purple flowers at the top. And they're actually like written about by ancient Greeks. And the Greeks were saying the plants were the most important. They're like more important than clothing.
Oh, wow.
It treated like 47 illnesses. So she's like, look, I don't know. This was passed down to me, so I'm passing it down. Like,
yeah,
very fancy leaves here.
Sure.
But she didn't admit to it. So, of course, they tortured her by hanging her by her arms, which was called torture on the ropes.
Ugh.
After she's been tortured, she admitted, she's like, okay, I practiced witchcraft, whatever. She got super detailed. She had relationships with demons. She was sucking on children's blood. No, she wasn't.
Yeah.
She said it all started after a devil called Paletto took her to the infernal Sabbath. Bam, she admitted it, and she's then put on the list to be burned at the stake. However, the Inquisitor was like, old lady, is you lying? Did you do all that stuff? And she was like, yes. I made that up. I'm scared of you.
Yeah.
I'm scared of being put on the ropes. Obviously, I didn't drink children's blood. Like, where's the child?
You were
like,
torturing me. Yeah.
Blood. Yeah. And then they said, okay, put her in a prison. Let's think on it. And then she was like basically exiled, but she was allowed to live. She was a lucky one.
That is the only case I've heard of where that happened. Like, there are some cases, I don't want it to seem like every single person who was accused was put to death, but like the vast majority were.
Oh, yeah. It was like a 95% rate.
Yeah.
That you're gonna die.
So all over Europe, people went just completely insane on and off for several centuries. Like, I would compare this to mass hysteria.
Oh, yeah.
When the Scottish king, King James the Sixth,
I think so.
Another Roman numeral, thank you, sailed to Copenhagen to marry Princess Anne of Denmark. A huge coastal storm hit their boat. It required him to land in Norway to wait out the rough waters. Someone made a remark that essentially blamed the storm on witchcraft. They're like, oh, what's up, king? Somebody's probably after you, and it's probably a witch, and that's how this storm happened. Or like a curse of some kind was put on him. He became obsessed with the idea that someone was out to get him, and this would eventually lead to the North Berwick witch trials of 1950.
No.
1590.
Yes.
Switch those around.
No, I don't. No, it wasn't.
Could have been 1950. Please tell me it wasn't.
Nope. Also, I just want to tell everyone, King James, people probably were out to get you, seeing that it's like the 1500s and you're a king.
No, they 100% were, yeah.
People are trying to kill you, guaranteed.
They revealed like actual murder plots. It just wasn't by like lady healers that were wandering around doing their own business, right?
It wasn't that. It was like people actually trying to stab your ass or poison you, more likely.
So the North Berwick witch trials of 1590, not 1950. A reliable source tells me. Over 70 people would eventually be accused, but the first was poor Galis Duncan.
I love that name.
Especially with a Scottish accent. Have you seen Outlander?
Of course I have.
Right. So Galis is the redheaded woman that gets accused of witchcraft. Like, that's actually Galis Duncan.
Well.
Galis, also known as Gilly. So Gilly was trying to make a little extra cash on the side to support her family and help her community when out of nowhere her employer, David Seaton, accused her of being a witch after she was unable to tell him how she had learned to heal people.
It sounds like he propositioned her and she said no.
Oh, 100%, because he's the one who eventually does the inquisitioning. Like, he's the one who interrogates her. Why would they just appoint him to be like, oh, well, you know her best. Why don't you go ahead?
They were like, yeah, you probably know some stuff.
Did she steal your wiener? Be honest.
I forgot about that for a second.
After being accused by more townspeople who said that Galis was, quote, belligerent and had been seen at, quote, witch gatherings that involved drinking and music, which...
sounds like a good time.
If she's belligerent and she's at a drinking and music gathering, that sounds like me on a Friday.
Could be you. That's you. They mistook you.
So the inquisitors began to torture poor Gilly, who was literally on trial for helping people with what her accusers called healing curses.
She helped me too much.
If you're healing people with your curses, is it really such a bad thing? Number one.
It's not a curse. It's not a curse then.
Right. While being tortured for prolonged periods, Gilly finally admitted that she had made a contract with the devil. Now, what I will say is that what they did to her was they excessively used this tool called a pillywink.
Yeah.
Which, despite the fact that it sounds like it was invented by Elmo,
it was not,
is a vice-like instrument used for squeezing or smooshing your fingers. Mm-hmm. Crush the bones in your fingers.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So they did that to her. She was also repeatedly sexually assaulted by her boss. She also was deprived of sleep and food before she eventually confessed. She went on to then implicate dozens of people, including Euphemie McCalazan.
I love that.
And I wish that witches were real because this is a fantastic witch name. Euphemie?
It's a good name.
Beautiful. Mwah. Chef's kiss. If you named that witch, congratulations. Barbara Napier and Agnes Sampson. All three of those women were later said to have made a deal with the devil to cast a spell that would sink the king's ship. After a trial in which Galis couldn't afford a lawyer to represent her, she was burned alive at the stake.
Nope.
The North Berwick witch trials were actually the first major trials in Scotland, but many of them followed, claiming an estimated total of 3,000 to 4,000 lives between 1560 and 1707. Even Scottish nobility weren't actually above suspicion, and several, Scottish noble people were actually accused of being witches. What's really interesting is that in March of this year, 2022, Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, actually formally apologized for the persecution of alleged witches during the 16th, 17th, and 18th century, and the Scottish government had never previously apologized for those things.
Could we keep going on this?
Absolutely.
Yes, we could keep going.
Yes.
Should we?
For a part 2.
Only for a part 2 for Salem witch trials. It was crazy, but I'm so glad Sydney brought this topic up to cover, and I'm so glad because I think, like, first of all, it's like my favorite. I love all of this stuff.
But thank you guys for listening. We hope you liked it. I think it's super interesting, and we are going to next week cover the Salem witch trials, just because now we're on a witch bender. So we hope you like it. We're doing witchy shit.
We love it. If you think this is cool shit, like and subscribe.
Yeah, don't forget to leave us a review wherever you like to listen. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Malpractice Podcast. Check it out.
Yeah, you can.
And don't forget, malpractice makes perfect.
Bye.
Bye-bye.